All right, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. You know, it's funny, we talk a lot about, well, justice and freedom and equality on the show,
You're
but
right.
what about when those things are missing? When things are kind of the opposite, like when
Hmm.
things just feel off,
Hmm.
when it seems like power isn't where it should be,
Yeah.
or when someone is taking advantage of someone else. I feel like what we're often talking about then, even without knowing it,
Yeah.
is domination.
Oh, absolutely.
So I thought it would be really fascinating to do a deep dive into domination. Like, what does that even mean? And like, what do philosophers have to say about it? Because obviously they've been thinking about this stuff for,
Oh, yeah, forever.
yeah, like centuries, millennia,
Yeah.
And we've got this great resource. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy has this entry on domination.
Yes.
So
Really comprehensive piece.
yeah, and we're not going to read the whole thing,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
but we're going to kind of like pretend that we're sitting down,
Right.
right? Just you and me trying to figure this out. Like,
Yeah.
what is domination? Why should we care?
Yeah.
What does it tell us about the world?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the entry itself does a good job of kind of starting us off with um, what it calls the basic idea of domination,
Right.
which even though, there's a ton of debate and back
Yeah.
and forth about all these nuances and stuff, it seems like there's this kind of baseline
Mm-hmm.
agreement about what domination is.
Yeah.
And the way they put it is, it's like this unconstrained, unjust imbalance of power
Right.
that lets somebody control other people,
Okay.
or at least control the situations as other people are in, so
Yeah.
so that they don't have, the freedom and the
Right.
choices that maybe they should have.
Right. Okay.
So it's not just like any old power imbalance, like
Right. Right.
I'm taller than you,
Yeah.
so I can reach the cookie jar. That's not domination. It's
Yeah.
it's a particular kind
The
of.
more insidious than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to kind of break this down a little bit,
Okay.
the entry points out like 5 key elements that kind of like make up this basic idea. So the first one is domination is a form of power,
Okay.
but it's usually social power. So it's like power over people.
So not just like power over resources.
Right, exactly. It's about people.
Okay.
The second part is it always involves, well, an imbalance of power. I mean, that's kind of baked into the word.
It is, right.
It comes from the Latin dominus, like dominant, which
Yeah.
means master.
Right.
And so that relationship, even though it's like a really extreme example, the master and the slave,
Yeah.
it really gets at like what's at the heart of domination.
Right. Like that complete
Yeah.
power differential.
And that brings us to the third part, right? Like domination, it doesn't always look the same, It can have many forms. So like tyranny and patriarchy, they bring up these as like the classic examples.
Right. Like the paradigms. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these are kind of obvious instances of domination.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not always that clear cut.
Right.
Think about it. Domination can exist in degrees, right?
Totally.
Like you can have some dominating power over someone without, having complete control over every move.
Right.
So it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. Yeah.
The fourth element is, okay, now this dominating power, it has to be unconstrained.
Unconstrained.
It's like
yeah.
arbitrary,
Okay.
The person in power, they can do what they want,
Right.
basically, because they
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
They don't have to justify it. They don't have to take into account
Right.
what the other people want or think,
Mhm.
So it's not about like a fair exchange or anything. It's just, I have the power,
Right.
so I can.
Right. Like a benevolent dictator is still a dictator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, the fifth part, I think this is where it gets really interesting, is that domination it's not just about power, it's about injustice. Right. It's considered morally wrong, like fundamentally.
Right.
And so it's natural, it's understandable that the people being dominated would feel resentment,
Totally.
anger, a sense of like, this isn't right.
Right.
And that can even, lead to resistance.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it has to, right?
Yeah.
If you're being treated unfairly and you know it, then
Sure.
how could you not resist eventually?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so that's like the foundation, right? Like when we talk about domination, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But then this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are all these different questions that come up. Like,
Right.
okay, so who or what
Yeah.
can actually be a dominator? Is it just individuals or
Right.
can it be like groups?
Yeah.
Can it be like systems?
Really?
Like an entire system of government?
Right.
Or ideologies? Like where does the domination lie?
This is where we start to get into some of the disagreements.
Right.
So one perspective, and this is one of the big ones, what they call the neo-Republican view.
Okay.
And there are a bunch of thinkers who fall into this, like Philip Pettit is one of the big names.
Okay.
They tend to argue that only what they call agents can dominate.
Okay, so what does that mean? Agents.
So an agent is basically any individual or like a collective body, like a corporation or a government
Okay.
that can actually act.
Okay, so it has to be like a thing that can make decisions.
Right, exactly. It has to be
Yeah.
capable of action.
Do things.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they acknowledge that, like, yeah, groups of people can have this dominating effect, even if they don't, like, get together and plan it out. You know,
Yeah.
like, think about, like, racial biases in society.
Mm-hmm.
Those can lead to domination, even if not every single person is, like,
Yeah.
intentionally trying to dominate someone else.
Right.
But the neo-Republicans, they really focus on this idea of accountability. They're like, look, if we want to be able to say, like, this person or this group is responsible for domination,
Right.
then we need to be able to point to an agent, like, who's actually doing the dominating.
Right. So it's not just like a vague force
Right.
in the world. It's
Got to be something we can identify.
right. Okay. So if you can't identify the agent, then
Then it gets tricky.
it gets tricky to say
Yeah.
if there's even domination happening.
Right.
Oh,
So that's one view. But then there's this other perspective that says, well,
Yeah.
actually, domination, it's primarily about the relationship between groups.
okay.
So, like, individual acts of domination, they're kind of secondary. They're like
Mhm.
a symptom of this larger imbalance.
So it's like the group dynamics
Okay.
that create the conditions. or is it not?
Exactly. It's about the structure.
Okay.
Now, this leads to this really thorny question,
Yeah.
right? Which is like, okay, but can non-agents dominate?
Okay. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, what would even be an example of that?
So the entry brings up this example from Václav Havel
Okay.
about this grocer in Czechoslovakia under communist rule.
Okay.
And the grocer, like, puts up these signs in his shop window
Right.
with slogans, supporting the regime.
Okay.
But he's not really doing it because he believes in it. He's doing it
Right.
so he doesn't get in trouble.
Right.
So is the grocer dominating anyone?
Right.
Or is he just like a small part of this larger dominating system?
Right. Or is he being dominated himself
Yeah.
in a way by having to put up the signs?
That's the question.
Right.
And what about, like, social norms? Like
Yeah.
the pressure to conform to certain gender roles, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that domination by an individual, or is it domination by this ideology that's
Right.
kind of like seeped into the culture?
Right. Like internalized
Yeah.
expectations.
So you see how these different perspectives, they really highlight different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it about individual accountability,
Mm-hmm.
or is it about changing the whole system?
Right. It's like, where do you locate the problem?
I don't get it.
And then what's the solution?
Right.
Okay. So this is already getting really complicated.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
Okay.
So there's this other point the entry brings up from this philosopher named Lovett.
Okay.
And he talks about, like, imagine a law that permits slavery,
Okay.
but there aren't actually any slaves yet.
Okay.
So his argument is that law, it creates the conditions, like it enables domination,
Right.
but it's not domination itself.
It's like the potential for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, until it's actually acted upon.
Right.
So there's this difference between the tools of domination
Mm-hmm.
and the actual act of dominating.
Okay.
Then there's this even weirder thought experiment that this philosopher Blunt came up with.
Okay.
He's like, okay, imagine these robots, these automatons, and they're programmed to enforce the will of this legislator who's long dead.
Okay.
And the legislator, he set up a system that was dominating, right?
Okay.
But now he's gone, but the robots are still enforcing his will.
So who's doing the dominating?
Right, exactly.
Is it the robots? But
Yeah.
they're not people. They're just
Right, they're just following their program.
following their programming.
So this really gets at, like, can domination exist even without any person actually, like, pulling the lever?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
So it's not just about individuals.
Oh,
It
yeah.
could be this like legacy of power that gets built in.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this really challenges the idea that it always has to be like a person who's doing the dominating.
Absolutely.
It could be a system that's
Yeah.
set up in a certain way.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, right? Like, if we want to challenge domination, is it enough
Right.
to just focus on individual bad actors? Or do we need to look at these larger structures and,
Right.
and systems.
That's a great point, yeah.
All right, so then we get to this other big question that the entry brings up, which is like, okay, but does domination actually require the exercise of power?
Okay.
Or is it enough to just have a certain kind of power structure in place?
Okay, so like you don't have to be actively dominating someone, but if the structure
if the potential is there
exists, then that's enough.
That's the question.
Okay, so like the potential versus the actuality of domination.
Exactly.
So what do the different views say about this?
So the neo-Republicans, unsurprisingly, they really emphasize this potential for interference. So for them, freedom isn't just about whether someone's actually like messing with you right now. It's about whether they could mess with you if they wanted to and do it without having to answer to anyone or justify themselves. So there's this famous thought experiment, the benevolent slave master.
Right.
Like, let's say you have a slave owner who's actually really nice to their slaves, treats them well, doesn't abuse them. But the neo-Republicans would say those slaves, they're still unfree. Because the master still has the power to do whatever they want.
To change their mind at any moment.
Exactly. So for them, it's really about the structure of the relationship, not just the way it plays out in practice.
Okay, so it's like the potential for arbitrary power is what makes it
Exactly. Yeah, and Pettit, he's very skeptical of this idea that, like, oh, we can trust people in power to just use their power responsibly.
To always be benevolent.
Exactly. He's like, no, you need external checks. You need rules, you need accountability, or you need like really strong internal constraints.
Okay. So you have to design the system in a way that prevents that potential for abuse.
Otherwise, you're just relying on luck.
Okay.
But this brings up a really important objection, which is like, okay, but if you just focus on the structure, are you missing what the people being dominated actually object to?
Okay, so like they might not care that there's the potential for abuse if they're being treated okay.
Like if they're not actually being harmed, is it really domination? So the entry, it brings up this example of Columbus, right? Like he had the power to exploit the native people he encountered. But maybe he chose not to in some cases, right? So was that still domination?
That's a really good question.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I think the work of this philosopher, Rogers, is really interesting.
Okay.
He talks about these Black American Republicans in I think it was the 19th century. And these were folks who were fighting against slavery, obviously. But they weren't just focused on like changing the laws. They were also really concerned with like the cultural values and the way that white people like acted and behaved and thought about Black people. So they understood that even if you got rid of the legal structures of slavery, you could still have this underlying domination going on.
Because the attitudes hadn't changed.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like domination isn't just about the rules, it's about
the culture.
The whole mindset.
Yeah. So you can see how this gets really complex.
Yeah.
You know?
But then there's also this worry, right, that if domination is just about the capacity for arbitrary interference, then doesn't that make almost everyone a potential dominator?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like anyone who's stronger than someone else or more persuasive or...
It seems like it's everywhere.
Yeah, it seems like, how do you even draw the line?
And this is where some feminist philosophers have raised some really important critiques. They point out that if you define domination just as the ability to interfere, then it makes even like carrying relationships seem suspicious. Like think about a parent and a child. The parent obviously has more power. They can interfere in the child's life. But is that domination?
I mean, hopefully not. It's like care.
Exactly. It's coming from a good place. But if you just focus on the potential for interference, it all kind of looks the same. So this leads to this alternative idea that domination requires an abuse of power. It's not just about the capacity. It's about using that capacity in a way that violates some kind of moral standard.
To harm someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Or to take advantage.
So you have to look at the outcome. Not just the potential.
Okay.
But then, if you define it that way, what about situations where people avoid interference by, like, being super agreeable,
Oh, right, right,
or by just trying to stay out of the powerful person's way?
right.
Would they not be dominated?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they would, right?
It does, doesn't it?
It's just that they're avoiding
Yeah.
the negative consequences.
They're managing the situation
Right.
as best they can.
Yeah, but they're still being dominated. It's just that it's not
Yeah.
as visible.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is where the neo-Republican idea of domination as like a condition of vulnerability
Okay.
becomes really important, especially from a feminist perspective.
Okay.
Because it captures this power imbalance, even when it's not being actively exercised.
So it's about the underlying power dynamic.
Yeah, the fact that you're vulnerable to that arbitrary interference, even if it's not happening right this second.
Okay.
So it's not just about the action, it's about the context in which that action could take place.
Right.
And then, to complicate things even further, the entry brings up these examples.
Okay.
Like the playground bully,
Right.
who only picks on certain kids.
Right.
Or Senator McCarthy, whose power was, a lot scarier to some people than to others.
Yeah.
So these examples, they challenge this idea that just having the capacity for interference automatically means you're dominating everyone.
Right.
It suggests that like the likelihood of you interfering and who you're likely to interfere with.
Yeah, who's most vulnerable.
Yeah. So this leads to this idea from Shapiro about vulnerability to domination as a separate concept.
Okay.
Like it's not the same as domination itself,
Right.
but it's still really important.
Okay, because it helps us understand who's most at risk.
Exactly. And there's this other point that people seem to generally agree on, which is that, you can be dominated, even if no one's actively dominating you right now.
Right.
It's like the past can still have this power over the present.
Right. Like if you know your boss can fire you at any moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you've seen them do it before.
You're going to behave differently.
Yeah, you're going to be walking on eggshells.
So even if they're not actively threatening you, that power dynamic is still there.
It's like the ghost of domination past.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've talked about, who can dominate and whether you have to actually exercise power. But now we get to this really kind of nitty-gritty question, which is like, what kind of power are we talking about when we talk about domination?
Okay, so like how do we even define?
Yeah, what are the essential characteristics of this power?
Right.
So this is where we get into all these categories and distinctions that the entry lays out.
Okay, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the big distinctions is between moralized and non-moralized theories of domination.
Okay, so a moralized theory would say that.
A moralized theory basically defines domination by using moral concepts.
Right.
So, for example, they might say domination is the power to violate someone's rights.
Okay.
Or to undermine their well-being.
Okay.
A non-moralized theory, on the other hand, they try to define domination without bringing in morality.
Okay, so just like the structure of the power.
Yeah, exactly. Like who can do what to whom.
Okay.
But, even the people who are arguing for non-moralized theories, they're still usually concerned with ethics.
Right. They're not saying that domination is a good thing.
Well, exactly. They're just saying that we can define it without having to already decide whether it's right or wrong.
Okay. Okay. So it's more about like how do you identify it and then you can figure out if it's good or bad.
And then the other big distinction is between norm-dependent and norm-independent theories.
Okay. So this is about rules.
Right. So norm-dependent theories, they argue that domination always involves power being used in relation to norms.
Okay, so like social norms or...
Yeah, social norms or laws or even like unwritten rules about how things work.
So you can't have domination without some kind of framework.
It's like domination is about trying to control people through the rules.
Okay.
Even if those rules are unjust. Norm-independent theories, they're like, no, you don't need rules.
Okay.
Domination is just about the raw power to interfere.
Okay, so it's more...
It's more basic than that.
Primal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if we combine these two distinctions, we've got 4 possibilities.
We do.
Right. We've got non-moralized and norm-independent, moralized and norm-independent, non-moralized and norm-dependent, and moralized and norm-dependent.
All 4.
Okay, so let's dive into each of those, see what they look like.
So let's start with the non-moralized norm-independent theories.
Okay.
So these are all about like the capacity to interfere with someone's choices,
Okay.
regardless of, whether it's right or wrong,
Okay.
or whether there are any rules about it.
Right.
So Pettit and Lovett, they often fall into this category.
Okay.
And Pettit, he's got this famous eyeball test.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Right. Like, can you look someone in the eye without fear or deference?
Right.
That's kind of a way of gauging whether there's this kind of dominating power dynamic.
Right.
Lovett, he emphasizes that domination happens in relationships. Right.
Oh, okay.
And those relationships have to have, like, 3 characteristics. They got to have strategic interdependence.
Okay.
So, like, the people involved, they need each other in some way.
Right.
They got to have a big power imbalance.
Right.
And it's got to be really costly for the dominated person to just leave the relationship.
Okay, so, like, they're trapped.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's interesting because Pettit, he's kind of shifted his focus from arbitrariness
Right.
to control as the main feature of domination.
Okay, so it's not just that you can do whatever you want. It's
Right.
that you actually...
You actually have control over the situation.
Okay.
And he's trying to keep it non-moralized, right?
Okay.
So he's not saying, like, it's bad control. He's just saying, like,
Right.
there are no effective checks on your power.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping you
Exactly.
from using it badly.
And this kind of connects to Jung's idea of domination as the opposite of thorough democracy,
Okay.
right? Like, if everyone has an equal say,
Right.
then no one can dominate anyone else.
Okay. Yeah.
Although, how do you actually do that in a big, complex society?
Right.
That's a whole other question.
Right, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, but he offers this slightly different angle. He's like, look, maybe avoiding domination isn't about perfect democracy.
Okay.
Maybe it's just about having rules
Oh.
that are clear, that are enforced,
Right.
and that everyone knows about.
Okay.
So he even says, like, imagine a really oppressive regime,
Mm-hmm.
but they follow their